What's going on, everybody? Welcome to part 2 of the web development with Django and Python knowledge transference. Okay, in this video what we're going to be talking about is models. We're just going to start getting into models and how we can interact with them, but pretty much models with Django is where you're getting almost all of the value from the Django web framework is coming from models and basically the abstraction from those models. So this is another one where I think you might want to spend a little more time making sure you understand it really well before you move on to the next topic. So with that, let's get into it. So again, models are just the way that your website or your app gets to interact with the information stored within your database. So for example, on our website, we might want to store like for sure you're going to store like users to your database. You're going to store so like for a user you might store like a username, the actual person's name, an email, a password, all that kind of stuff. And then in our case too, we would like to likely store our actual tutorials to the database. We will get to users, I promise, but that's a more complex issue because you got to do the registration, login, and sessions, and hashing passwords, all kinds of stuff, and forms, and stuff like that. So for now, we're going to try to keep it more simple, and we're going to focus first on just a simpler tutorial model. So a tutorial model, what kind of aspects or attributes would a tutorial have? Well, you've got like the tutorial content. So this is just, the actual body of the tutorial. But then you've got like maybe a tutorial title, and then the publish date, maybe a playlist or a series that it's a part of, and then maybe like a category or something like that. We probably won't do all of those yet, but eventually that might be what you would use. Now, in terms of other, like if you were just trying to come up with some way to store these things to your database, you would really want to spend a lot of time before you built your actual database out. You'd want to spend a lot of time thinking ahead, like what might I need in this database? Because you're not going to want to migrate a database. but with Django, it really is so simple that you don't need to think about everything in advance. It's not going to cost you anything really to later decide, I want to have this column, or I want to have this other attribute, or I don't really need this one anymore, so I'm going to get rid of it. That kind of stuff. It's not a big deal with Django. So anyways, let's get into it. So with models, we're just going to navigate into the app that we're curious about. So in our case, that's main. We've been working there. I'm going to close these just to avoid clutter. And we're going to open up models.py. So in here, you've really only got this one import, and that's just import models. And all this is for is every model is going to inherit from Django's base model. So what we're going to do is we're just going to define a new class, and we're going to call this class tutorial. And like I said, it inherits from models.model. And all that means inheritance. If you want, you can go to Python Programming.net, go to the intermediate tutorials, and you can learn more about inheritance. But basically, we are extending this model. So models.model already has a bunch of different attributes and things associated with it, and then we can just say the little things that we want to change, so like what columns and stuff like that. But honestly, if you don't know what this means or you don't care to know, it's not that big of a deal. You should just know that you have to pass that. But if you want to learn more, it's just inheritance, and you can look more into it. So anyways, let me zoom in a little bit here. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just basically specify the columns that we want in our tutorial. So, maybe you're going to have a tutorial title, okay? And that tutorial title would be models.carfield, and we'll give this a max length of 200. What I want to grab for you guys is I'd like to show you the documentation. So let me think here. Django model fields. Hopefully that will take us where we want to be. Let me just do a quick search for Carfield. Looks like it's probably on this page. Yeah. Okay, so I will put a link to the text-based version of the tutorial for sure in the description. Otherwise, you can just do the same Google search I just did and find yourself here. But obviously, this is quite a large page. There are many different fields that you can have. I'll explain the ones I'm going to use, but just know that many, many more exist, and you should just come here to learn about at least all of your options. But the ones like most people are going to use like car field, a text input or something, like text field, and then there's maybe like a date input type, and then maybe like numbers only, stuff like that. Pretty much people are going to use all the same keys, and you probably won't need 90% of the available keys. So, anyways, back to where we were. So this is a car field, max length is 200. Then we're going to add a tutorial content, and that will be models.text field, and then no parameters. So then immediately the astute among us would be like, whoa. What's the difference between a car field and a text field? So a car field or a care field or whatever you want to call it, char field. I have heard people call that a char field. Anyways, whatever you want to call it, the car field is basically if you want to set a maximum, and generally a car field is going to be a shorter thing, whereas a text field is like a blob. Although I would be surprised. Let's see if we search blob. Oh, really? Text blob. No? Okay. Anyway, I thought they would probably have a unique one for blob, but maybe that's what it maps to in SQL or something, as just like a text blob or something. Anyway, text field is like what you would use for a tutorial or an article or something of not finite length. So, anyways, the next thing we're going to do, tutorial content, let's do tutorial published. That's going to be models.datetime field. And then we're going to have this called date published. Okay. So that's enough information. Also, we can do various overrides like I was talking about. So we can override the string method. So we could return tutorial title. And in fact, first of all, this would need to be self. My eye is super itchy. Self. So all we're doing this for is because generally if we display this object and like print out the object, let's say, it's going to look kind of ugly. It's going to be like something like tutorial object, blah, blah, blah. And instead what we should say is as we iterate over it, maybe we want to know the title or something like that. Like, so it just makes it a little better to read. So, okay. So we've got our model. Now, anytime you create a model, basically a model is going to map to a database table. So this is so we've got our database already, basically, or you already should have a database. I'm trying to decide where it would be, probably back here. Yeah, here's your database right here, DB SQLite 3. The default is SQLite. Later you can change that if you go to my site, settings.py, and then somewhere in here. It'll be somewhere in here. Anyways, oh, right here probably. Yeah, so this will be your database engine. You could change it. SQLite is great for development and tutorials like we're doing right now. You can scale an SQLite database actually quite well. So I wouldn't, the conventional internet wisdom will tell you, never use SQLite in production. Maybe. SQLite's actually pretty darn powerful. It's just that MySQL or something like that, or even some of these other databases, is probably a better choice in your deployment. But we can even talk about that way later down the road. SQLite 3 is nice because it comes with Python. Nobody has to do an installation, and everybody can follow along no matter the operating system. So we'll keep SQLite 3. And anyways, you already have your table. So what this is going to do is, you already have your database. What this is going to do is create a new table tutorial, and then all of these things become your columns in that table. And then it automatically, just by default, gives you a primary key. So anybody who's familiar with making databases and stuff is like, wait. You will already have a primary key. It's just default done for you. But you could also, if you wanted, set one of these to be your primary key if you so chose. But we're not going to focus on that for now. So every time you make a new model, that's a new table. Therefore, you have to do two things with Django. One, you have to do a thing called make migrations, and all that does is kind of prepare your migrations. Then you have to actually migrate. So it's two steps. So as you've seen already when we run our server, I'm assuming one is still running. Nope, I guess I'm not running a server anymore. So Python manage.py run server. It was giving us a message before. Let's see what it does this time. Okay, so it says, we need to probably run a migrate. This is really only because we just made this website that we want to run this. So what I'm going to do, I guess, cd, what do we call this? My site? Right? My site? Yes. So I think it's in here. So what we can do is, I hate that, I'm just going to do it in order that you're supposed to do it. We'll do the other migrations at the same time, because there's only one time you'll run that migrate first. So what we're going to say here is basically every time you add or change, so if you add another model or you want to change a pre-existing model, you have to make migrations, then migrate. And that's basically it, unless you happen to hit an error. So we've made this new model, so the first thing I want us to do is make migrations. So we're just going to say Python manage.py make migrations. And it says no changes detected. So what happened here? The reason why I really did do this on purpose, you're going to hit this, and if I didn't hit it for you, you would be stumped, or at least if you're like me and you're slow, you would be stumped for a few minutes. So what happens is anytime you start a new app, we were able to point to that new app, but we haven't installed that new app. So first we have to install that new app in order for it to add tables to our database. I'm not really sure the design reason why we can have URLs be pointed to it and all that. We could do that, but we can't do models. I don't know. Anyways, that's the way it is. And I guess because if you're explicitly pointing, but anyway, I don't know. It feels funky to me. But anytime you create a new app, you have to also install that app if you want to use models. So let's go ahead and install it. We're going to come over here to my site, settings.py, actually was already open. And then it should be near the top. Basically where we, so right here. This is where you're going to add any new apps that you want to add to your project. So let's just go ahead and do it. So in this case, it's actually main.apps.main.config. That's what you need to add. You should immediately ask yourself, does main.apps main config already exist? Well, we can actually check that really quick. Main apps, boom. Here we are, main config, name equals main. Great. So it already exists. Sounds good. So as long as settings is saved, we'll come back over here and let's try to make migrations again. Sure enough, we made a migration. So all this says is it just kind of gives us a quick summary of what it's done for us. So it's just saying, hey, we're going to make a, basically we're adding a new model. If you were going to change things, it would say, hey, we're changing something to something and blah, 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 and all that. Also, you can come into your directory here, and then now we've got this migrations, and you can kind of see what its plan is for the future. If you open that, I don't know why. I should have stayed in Sublime. But anyways, if you want, you can check that out. You probably will never check it out. But if you wanted to, you sure could. The other thing you could do is actually get the SQL for it. So if you want to do this, you could say Python manage.py SQL migrate main, and then you get the ID. So in this case, it was 0001. Hit enter here. And this just tells you the exact SQL, should you be curious, that will be executed. Maybe if you like SQL a lot, you just want to see how they're doing it or something. But again, you're probably never doing that. Really, all you're going to do is you make a new model, you run the make migrations, that Python manage.py make migrations. We can run it again. It's just going to say nothing new. Then all you're going to run is Python manage.py migrate. So this time it did quite a few things, only because we just never ran that migrate that it was asking us to run. I personally found that to be kind of confusing, that we initially ran migrate and then later we make a model and then you got to run make migrations and then migrate again. It just really stumped me. All you need to know, you do something with a model, make migrations, migrate, done. It's not complicated, I promise. So our model is completed. Now we're ready to start interacting with it. So the next thing that I think is kind of cool that I don't think you're going to need it this early in, but I do think it's just a cool aspect to Django that, again, if you were doing things on your own, you would probably never make for yourself, but it's pretty cool that we have this. So one thing that we can say is Python manage.py shell. And this gives us like an interactive shell to play with our website. So rather than like if you're trying to do something, like for example, let's say we make some tutorials, then we want to iterate over the tutorial, but something's going wrong, and especially like later on when we have like foreign keys that are pointing to different tables and we're trying to figure out, okay, how can we pull and how do we write the statement that we want to write? And if you're trying to like build a view in if you're trying to do like views.py and then put it to a template and then like navigate to that page and reload that page just to see if it worked, it's very tedious. So instead you could use something like the shell. So just real quick, we can do something like this. We could say from main.models, we want to import our tutorial model. Then what we could say is like tutorial.objects.all, and this is the exact same syntax that you would actually use in, like, for example, your views.py. You wouldn't say from main, it would be a relative import. But anyways, you would do something very similar to this, at least, and actually tutorial objects.all, this is something that you would do. So, because you can do like .all, you can filter, you can do all kinds of cool stuff, all of which we'll end up actually using. So anyways, in this case, we see there's nothing here. There are no tutorial objects. All we did was just create the table of the database. So we would need to like add a tutorial in here. So we can definitely do that. We have tutorial title, content, and published. So real quickly, we can just add one in. So we can say, we can create this like new tutorial object. And we can say that is equal to a tutorial. And then we'll say tutorial title equals to be. Can anybody guess where this is going? Tutorial content equals or not to be. And finally, I done goofed. I don't know if I can get away with this, because what we want to do is actually use a date time here. I think I'm going to let it throw a syntax error, and then I'll just use the up arrow, because I guess I could copy it too, but I'm not really worried about that. Then what we're going to say is tutorial underscore published equals, and then I'm going to say timezone.now. This is going to fail because we don't have time zone, but that's okay. Cool. So let's bring in time zone really quick. That's from django.utils import timezone, and then I'll just run that again. So now we've got this new tutorial object, and again, if you're familiar with SQL, you can build an insertion, but then at the end of the day, you've got to commit it. So we're going to go ahead and new tutorial.save, because commit is a horrible word and nobody understands. It doesn't make sense to a newcomer anyways. So new tutorial.save, now we actually have it. So now if I just up arrow all the way to tutorial objects to all, boom, we've got one. Later, we could iterate over that. So for t in tutorial.objects.all, .all, 1, 2, 3, 4, print t.tutorial title, for example. Let's see, what did I do wrong? For t in tutorial, t.tutorial, what did I do wrong there? I feel like I've got to be like totally blind here. For T, oh, capital T tutorial is my issue there. I was like, when did I use tutorial? Okay, print T dot tutorial title. Did it? Okay, great. So again, this is the same sort of syntax and logic that you would use to actually iterate over your objects in, say, views.py before you might pass it to a template, but also you could run this in a template, which probably means nothing to you at the moment, but later it will. Anyways, pretty cool that Django, basically we've abstracted quite a bit away from writing our own SQL queries and all that, and later if we wanted to change things, and we will probably change things, it's like super simple to go about changing things. So I think at this point, I'm going to leave it here, and I think in the next tutorial what we'll talk about is likely the admin page. Whenever we did this, We also brought in our admin, so we just need to create an admin user account, and then I can show you guys the admin page, which is, again, one of the reasons why your models are just incredible that we have, and the admin page from Django is just exquisite. So I'm really excited to show you guys that. It's, again, one of the coolest things that you get from Django, and yeah. So questions, comments, concerns, whatever, feel free to leave those below. Quick shout out to my most recent channel members, Rodolfo, Sid K, Jiwan, Sun, and Ollie. Thank you guys very much for your support. I really appreciate it. It lets me do this kind of stuff, and I truly love doing this. So that's it for now. If you didn't know how to become a channel member, you click that beautiful, beautiful blue button there. That's it for now. I will see you guys in another video where I continue showing you guys the magic of Django.